So welcome back to Obviously Fight Talk, and I'm delighted to say we are now joined by a Fight Network presenter, an analyst. Fight breakdowns are a viral sensation. Alternatively, he's like an artistic sort of analysing of fights, you could almost say, the artistic way, not your stereotypical, he's going to punch him, he's going to kick him, he looks into it in depth. I'm delighted to say we are joined by the one and only Mr. Robin Black. So Robin, thank you so much for coming on to Obviously Fight Talk and having the time to talk to us.
Yeah, thanks, man, and thanks for the kind words. I like what you said. I appreciate it a lot. I mean, breaking down a fight, people have this bizarre idea, the concept of the breakdown of a fight is something that a very small amount of us introduced only 3, 4, 5 years ago. And my view of it was that a breakdown may be technical. Where does my head slip and how does that load my hand? Where do I move my foot? How did I use a feint? What did I do at distance? That's one thing. That is an element of breaking down fights, but that's a limiting factor. And like martial arts, you don't look for limiting factors, you look for unlimiting factors. As Bruce Lee said, let the limitation be no limitation. So I've always believed the fight breakdown can be physiological, it can be psychological, it can be tactical. And lately, I've been really into the macro view of things. And I think it's partly because I think fights are being won and lost with the macro view. The micro is, where do I stand? Where do I put my hand? What do I do if he grabs this? And that has been where all of the study and all of the research and all the training in gyms across the world have been going on for the last 10 years. And then the Wonderboy Thompsons and the Conor McGregors and the Tony Fergusons and all of these people think, you guys are all in the weeds. It isn't how the shoulder roll loads this thing, where my head moves and why my pivot works this way and what should I do to make him. It isn't all of that. It is, you're trying to do one thing and using a macro view of fighting, I'm going to change that. So it doesn't matter. I don't know people, how's this takedown defense? I don't need takedown defense if you cannot grab me. So, while everybody's going, oh, we got to train jiu-jitsu, we got to train striking, we got to have box this way, we've got to defend this way, and people create these bullshit like structures and descriptions. In reality, people like Kavanaugh and Wonderboy's father and all these other people are going, wait, these are limitations you guys have accepted that you must do and you must train. I think I'll beat you by just not having you catch me. How about I do that? And it becomes this big macro view. And so the way I've migrated towards breaking down fights, taking that into account that that's what's winning fights, that's how I'm breaking them down right now. I'm a little bit bored of the micro, just like, but I'll circle back to that. I'll be into the rhythm and the timing and all of these kinds of things and the technical stuff. But to me, fight breakdowns are hundreds of things. They are without limitation. So, because some people will say to me, that wasn't a fight breakdown. It's like, motherfucker, I invented fight breakdowns. How about I tell you what a fight breakdown is? But you know what I mean? It's like, I really appreciate those kind words, but the big picture thing is what's happening in fighting. That's the movement. That is the strides being made in martial arts, and I want to break fights down that way. So I enjoy it. I'm glad some people like it. I'm also glad some people don't like it, because that means you're pushing some envelopes, and I like that.
Yeah, but that's definitely, like, you can see, like, we even put up that we had you on, we'll be throwing a few Reddit questions at you as well, and you can see the reaction. And I always find you only get a hater or someone speaking poorly about you when you're doing something right. And Rob was saying before, like, you were breaking down, before it became the viral sensation that it certainly has now. Like, I know when a big fight is announced, I'm all over checking YouTube, when's the Robin Black breakdown? You want to look into it for the different ways you approach it, and exactly what you're talking about. You look at all the different ways. It's almost like mixed martial arts is such an open sport that it can be won in so many ways, but yet we are almost pigeonholed in a way to break down and look at fights. And you certainly you kick down the door, you knock down the walls, and you lift the roof off with your analyst.
Well, thank you. A simple comparison is when we are going to train, Rafael dos Anjos or any of these guys that were the champs only 18 months ago, we trained them a very specific way. And the people that were trying to beat them were trying to beat them by being better at those very specific things. That's not what the spirit of the martial arts has ever been about. It hasn't been about figuring out how to do the same 17 things as you slightly better, or do 9.5 of them slightly better. It's been about changing the game and changing the technology. And that's what's happening in the sport right now. If you're sitting around trying to And you do whatever you want as a fan. Not everybody has to dig as deep as, an eternal journey of study. That's what you have, Jack Slack or Dan Hardy or Lawrence Kenshin or whatever, and pick and choose. But if you're sitting there going, and I still see this, somebody will say a fight breakdown, and they'll go, well, he has better boxing, but he has better wrestling. And I think the jiu-jitsu battle is equal. So I say him by third round split decision. It's like, that's just bullshit. Like, that's just literally bullshit. And by all means, if you want to look at that. Do what makes you happy. But if you're on a journey of understanding, and not everybody should be because they have regular lives, it's only dorks like me that can dedicate my life to this kind of thing. You have to understand that what made sense 4 months ago makes no sense today at all. So if you're still, we do commentary of sports as if the description is permanent. We're like, pump fake to the long bomb in football, or you'll hear the same terminology that your dad heard when people talked about soccer or football, but it isn't the same thing. People, things change. You should have heard when I was in my teens and the internet came out, people were like, oh, that's a fad. And then Facebook came out and they're like, nobody's going to use that. And it's the same thing with any type of art or martial arts. Technology reflects all of that stuff. So you can't just sit around doing the same shit. And I look at something as simple as, okay, guys, it's the tail of the tape. So we're going to talk about fighting. We're going to set up the fight. And we're going to say it's the tail of the tape. Yeah. As one of our producers here pointed out to me years back, he's like, that was someone's idea once, 40 years ago in boxing or whatever sport, or 60 years ago. Why are we all fucking doing that? As if that's the only way we can do it. It becomes ritualistic. People become ritualistic about everything. And if you become ritualistic, and I was saying it this week, one of the functions of why a new technology can come along and be so hard to deal with in the art of fighting is because as soon as some gym finds success, they have 20 or 30 fighters. And those 20 or 30 fighters and then 100 young students who dream of being fighters come in, you must build a curriculum. And that curriculum has we do this, 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 and this. And when this happens, we do this. And then we try to break out. And that is not art. That is just learning a bunch of moves. That's being a craftsman. And so whether that's Eddie Alvarez, who very much can win this fight, I'm sure we're going to talk about it, or that's Tyron Woodley, or that's RDA, who did lose to Ferguson, whether that's any of those guys, then they become a craftsman. Instead of trying to get better at the craft, invent a new craft, paint outside the lines, change the rules. And that's what we're seeing right now. And I know we're going to talk about Wonderboy versus Woodley. That's what we're seeing in that fight. And I know we're going to talk about Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez, and that is what we're seeing in that fight too.
I think that brings us perfectly into the Tyron Woodley against Stephen Thompson fight, because I suppose on the face of things, a lot of people would think it's a wrestler versus a striker, but really we don't really have that here, because Tyron Woodley doesn't really use his wrestling the way he used to use his wrestling back in the Strikeforce days. I think he's landed 3 takedowns in his in his UFC career so far. He's really using his striking in most of his contests. He's using his takedowns as feints more than anything. And Stephen Thompson, again, he's not really using takedown defense. He's using footwork to stay away from the takedowns, just like you said. So coming on to this fight, what's your initial thoughts on it? How does each guy get it done in here?
I mean, the simple overview, and this is true. This was true for Rory McDonald, and this was true for everybody that's ever fought Wonderboy. If you can't get to him, you lose. And for the most part, you can't get to him. So the assignment isn't how do I leverage my wrestling to open up my striking, or the assignment isn't how do I whatever. The assignment is, like we were talking about earlier, macro versus micro. Macro, I have one job. I got to fucking get a hold of this guy. Now, there's a theory that if you can prioritize one goal, and of course you have to have many single goals, but one goal would be, and this is how people will view it sometimes. They'll identify, what is the one thing, if by doing it, all other things become less important or irrelevant, okay? And if you're looking at fighting Stephen Wonderboy, that one thing is getting to him. Because if you don't get to him, you'll lose 5 rounds like Rory did, or you'll start to panic and chase him like Ellenberger did, or like Hendricks did, and you'll lose, and you'll get finished. So we must get to him. And the thing that macro thing that he's become good at doing is being uncatchable until you get overly aggressive, and then he intercepts you, it hurts you, and then you hesitate, and because now you're hesitating, he just chews you up outside. So it's just a big picture game, and it's almost literally the opposite of how Ronda Rousey fought. Okay, so Ronda Rousey's game was, I must close the distance. Okay, I achieved that. I closed the distance. I must get either the underhook or the overhook. She's so good at that, she then does that. Then I must execute one of my throws. Then she does that. Then I'll use one of my 20 choices of how to get your armbar. And then she does that. And if at any point during that path she doesn't get it, she goes right back to the first step. So to beat Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm took away step one. Then there's nothing. And that's it. Ronda Rousey, step one, to win fights, needs to get into range. So Holly Holm just didn't let her do that. Wonderboy's the opposite. To beat Wonderboy, you must get into range. And Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is a master at not letting you get that. So if we agree that that's the issue, and we distill it down to that, and we know that's what we must accomplish, and Duke knows that's what he must accomplish, and Woodley knows that, and Duke's brought in his brother, Rick Rufus, who was also a karate champion, and their father. And the Rufus brothers and Rufus' father are trying to answer that riddle, and what they have is an incredibly high-level athlete who's super smart, very hardworking, and willing to do what's necessary and stick to the game plan. So it's awesome. It's great. It's a good starting point. But nobody's done it yet. And almost in losing to Matt Brown, the only loss pretty much of his career ever, including karate, mixed martial arts, and everything. That was so important for him to experience and now see how somebody could beat him and then even improve further. So can Woodley land the powerful right hand? Yes. Can he land it while Wonderboy's flat-footed? Wonderboy's never flat-footed. Can he get in and get to his hips and get him down? Maybe. If he does, can he stop Wonderboy from getting up while doing enough damage? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just, if Wonderboy's on his game and Woodley hasn't completely answered, and Woodley and his team haven't completely answered the issue, it'll look exactly like his last number of fights. If he has answered it, and one of the answers could be as simple as, just because everybody else failed in making their wrestling work, doesn't mean we don't do it. It means we do it with even deeper commitment. So that may be part of it. It's just like they quit too soon. Effort number 7, 8, 9, 10, 30, 50 could be the key to it. And if we get him to at least engage us in that, that's when the hand comes. So it's not like Woodley has to change it entirely. It's not just like just because a technology changes doesn't mean, unlike radio becoming TV, radio's fucked. It's fucked. You know what I mean? They just slowly die. Television, then you've got the internet. TV slowly die. The difference is with this kind of technology, there's little sub-technologies in it, little tiny technologies that the answer to the Wonderboy issue is one simple answer as well. Nobody can get a hold of them. Okay, well now I did. So we must solve that one problem. If they solve it, they win. If they don't, they lose. And and we're living in the game of fighting now is all these big picture challenges. Once everybody finds the answers to all these big picture challenges, it'll be a micro game again. Then it'll be about the small details within these big picture brushstrokes. But currently, get in on them or lose the fight. And I didn't just say anything anyone doesn't know right there. I just tried to add elements of contextualizing it. Anybody can say, well, if Woodley gets a hold of Stephen Thompson, then he can win, and if he doesn't, he can lose. Any idiot can say that. What I'm trying to do is not tell you something you don't know. I'm trying to contextualize it so you can frame this up for the next problem and the next problem and the next evolution and the next evolution. And that's what macro analysis is about, and that's what I'm really into right now. 3 weeks from now, I could be into another end of it because I'm in a permanent state of curiosity that I need to study and research. I could be only about the mindset a month from now. I could be only about the small details a month from now. I could be only about how things work in 3 dimensions. But right now, everything appears so big picture, and it is.
The one thing I'd say about Woodley here in this is Woodley is also going to come in with the confidence of a champion. It's not like it's the Tyron Woodley of coming just in from Strikeforce. He's now the UFC champion. He's coming in. You look what he done to Robbie Lawler. We literally, as we spoke about Tyron Woodley's fight with Robbie Lawler, we jokingly yawned because just Woodley just doesn't get me excited. I don't know why. It's just his fighting style. It just doesn't get me going. But in that fight with Robbie Lawler, his explosiveness, his speed and closing distance to shut down Robbie Lawler's offense was phenomenal. It was next to none, and it made me sit up and pay attention. And this, when I originally seen this fight announced, I thought Wonderboy can do what he wants in this fight. He's going to control the distance, have Woodley on the back foot. But for me in this fight, I think Woodley's explosiveness in closing the distance, and I don't just mean his power and striking, the speed in which he covers the distance to get to Wonderboy, I think that's his opportunity, and I think he has to do it early, because the longer he sits on that back foot, the more he's going to turn into Johnny Hendricks and not know what to do and be second guessing. He has to get in there and be explosive right from the get-go and risk the chance of getting caught.
I agree with you, but I also think that I'm trying to take the way we look at fight, because I think it's so exciting. I think it's the most curious and beautiful and special thing in the world. And I identify my job not as making a piece of TV that someone might click on and argue about, but really trying to add an idea that someone might like, or it might change something. And the biggest thing for me that I say to any conversation like this is everything that you just said is true. You know it, and I know it. So now, if you're Wonderboy and his father, do you think they know it?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Do you think they do? Of course they do. So what do they do about that becomes the next step. Because if we stop our conversation with, well, he needs to do this and he needs to do that, that's a conversation that motherfuckers had 5 years ago. We want to look deeper into it now. So the new conversation is, we know that they know that. So what do they do about it? And now we're going a level deeper into how this fight, into looking at the possibilities of this fight. If we say the Woodley father, or the Thompson father and son duo is like, okay, well, because they're going to identify. Okay, so the thing with him that makes him a little unique is he's got that ability to close distance really deceptively, really explosively, and really quickly. So we got 9 weeks. What are we going to do? That's the question that we need to be asking right now. So we know some of the answers to that. Okay, we're never moving back in a straight line. So number one, all the things that also, we better also assume Woodley is better than what we just saw, because we know we're getting better as a father and son team, and we've seen Weidman in the gym get better. We've seen all our training partners get better. So we assume that Woodley's getting better. So we must make that estimate even deeper than that. He's even faster, even able to close quicker, and may add angles or direction change that he's currently not capable of. So we didn't just prepare for that. We prepare for that and what he might have become. Now that we're doing that, we start adding big picture principles. We're never when he knocks people out, sometimes they're flat on their feet. Okay, well, we're never flat on our feet, so that's good. We're going to drill that home. Even though I haven't had to drill that home to you for 10 years, Stephen, it's still going to be something you're going to hear me say, because we're never flat on our feet. Secondly, we're never moving straight back. I know, Stephen, that you don't ever move straight back currently, but we're going to super reinforce that. And we're going to give them a little more space. We're going to bring in guys who are as fast or faster, if possible, have as good or even better acceleration, and we're going to train with those guys, and we're going to put them on assignments to get to us, and we're going to familiarize ourselves with that speed. So if we do that, then he isn't something different. Right now, he is something different. That those milliseconds it takes somebody normally to close the distance and get to us, there's even less milliseconds for this man. So we have to contextualize that. We have to prepare for that. We have to make that a reality that we're comfortable with, and then move on. So we assume this guy's slightly different or slightly better or an extra challenge. You and I know it, so they know it, so they prepare for it. And Woodley and Duke and those guys have to anticipate what those preparations are. And that's where the game is at now. Nobody's looking at somebody and going, I know the answer to this, leg kicks. Because the other team's going, they think leg kicks are the answer, so let's do this. So it's the depth of layering of guesswork. And guesswork at random, because if you're guessing wrong, you think he's going to lay you back, or you think he's got strategy A or strategy B. You have to project. You have to be a futurist about this person's ability to improve. Because again, somebody who knows nothing about fighting or watches it twice a month would go, "Oh, what are you kidding? This guy always throws that right hand." But these coaches aren't that guy. They understand that these things will change. So those are the layers that are happening in both camps right now. And if the layer happens equally and there's not some weird scenario or something different, then unless there are major changes made by Duke and his team, we'll see him beat him again.
And we'll push it to it again. You don't normally do it, but we'll say, will Bruce Buffer be saying "and still," or will he be saying "and new"?
Like I've said a lot of times, predicting fights is crazy, and those people they know who make fight picks every time, let them do it. A fight pick or a prediction on television or in any setting is a mechanism. It's a mechanism to engage the audience and create debate. It doesn't actually mean anything, because even the smartest of the smart could be right 60%, go on a 60% run and a 40% run, because it's chaos theory. Chaos theory is making sense, mathematical sense of chaos. Those are high-level mathematicians who also need to understand fighting, and even then, they'd only be X amount right. So, saying that and understanding that's the case, my picks are for entertainment purposes only, and I don't ever want anyone to bet on fighting. There is the rare occasion where I will come out, and I haven't bet on fights in years because it changes how I looked at them. Also, the more I understood, the more folly I think it is. The last time I purposefully made a bet on fighting, it was that Holly Holm would knock out Ronda Rousey, because I knew it was going to happen. But it was the day of, after everything that I'd analyzed and laid out about how to beat her, and studied that clearly they had been training that in her fights that weren't against Ronda. So people were like, well, she's not knocking anybody out. Or she wasn't fighting those fights. She was dress rehearsing Ronda Rousey. And then seeing Ronda snap the day of and the weigh-ins, you're pretty confident that that one was going to be one of these weird upsets where somebody would make 10-1. So I would tell my friends, say, but Ronda Rousey marches out, gets a hold of that thing, and she doesn't perform well. Because even with all of these things, the state of performance that the fighter is in at the time, if they're in their best state and the other one's in the worst, even a lower-level fighter wins. Or they're both in this great state, or they're both in a subpar psychological state. So there's a million variables. But having said that, I'd feel a lot more confident picking Woodley than I would picking Wonderboy than I would picking Woodley. And their strategy.
Nice. So in a way, you answered that like a beautiful politician, and the day that's in it as well. You sort of danced around it, but you got there. So let's move on to the historic, where the Irish hearts are fluttering.
I'm sorry. The truth is, my other answer would be, I don't make picks because they're stupid. Yeah. So instead, I said, I don't make picks because they're stupid, but having said that, I'll make a pick.
Yeah. So again, let's move on to where our Irish hearts are fluttering. Ireland's favourite, the pride of Ireland, as Bruce says. The notorious Conor McGregor, looking to make history by holding 2 belts in the UFC, taking on the champion Eddie Alvarez. Watching your breakdown for this, I loved the Sap Alvarez scale. I like the way I have a question straight off the bat before I forget it, because I said I have to ask this question. In the scale, you mentioned DJ, and you spoke about when he fought Brad Pickett. He was a high risk taker. When he lost to Brad Pickett, his risk sort of went down, and he said he'll never go and lose a fight in that term and that way again. Now, in the same way you were speaking about Conor when he took on Nate for the second time, and from what I got, I could be completely wrong, and this is why I'm asking, is that in a way were you comparing the first Nate fight to for Conor was like DJ's fight against Brad Pickett, that this was where you can see Conor learning from that fight, changing his game plan, changing the way he approaches fights, doesn't have to be the risk taker, he can win it in style without taking such high risk, and to go on and build a legacy. For me, DJ is probably the best pound for pound mixed martial artist at the moment, and it was that an analogy or a comparison that you were making, that the Nate was basically the Brad Pickett fight?
Yes, very much so. But the difference was that Conor was always a risk taker, because those risks were inherent to his success. The left hand, he He knew additional commitment from the left hand would take people out. But one of the risks, calculated risks, understood risks, not a flaw, a purposeful choice, was that amount of commitment to that Celtic cross left him there longer. He knew it. It's not a flaw. It's just the nature of that level of commitment to that punch. When that happened, he sometimes got hit with right hands. He knew that was the case. It's not like he didn't make adjustments because he couldn't. He didn't make adjustments because those guys didn't hurt him. He has a crazy chin. He has a size advantage. He's tough, psychologically tough, and in a state of relaxation, so he could take those punches forever. And so the nature of his winning success of the Celtic cross and building the fight around it allowed him to, take those shots. And the fact that he could take them, it's like, that's not even a risk to me. Then, the way I referred to it was he would look at a wall. And instead of, anybody knows that there's a million ways. Somebody says, get to the other side of the wall. You can climb over it. You can dig a trench under it. You can go around either side. You can grab an object and use it. You can disassemble the wall. And to him, every single time he had fought for 4 or 5 years, he had the ability to just smash through it. There's a weapon that has that ability. He has a chin that can take it. He's got a mind that's better than the other guy, in his opinion, in the moment. So what the fuck? You smash through it. And it worked every time. And then Nate Diaz was one that it wouldn't work because Diaz was bigger. Diaz was tougher than anyone he'd ever faced. Diaz would never be broken. And Diaz's shots would hurt because he weighed 175 pounds or 185 pounds, whatever he weighs. That's up for debate and irrelevant at the same time. This is a guy who fought at welterweight against a guy who fought at lightweight. So it became, all of a sudden, those things that were not risks, they were just values. They were just a good thing, became a good thing with risks now. So now they were still good, still the best left hand going, still a good psychology to do it. But the risks now became, I will occasionally get hit if I do this. This guy hits harder, and that's bad. And I don't have to really save anything for the swim back because there is no swim back. I take everybody out. Now you don't take this guy out, and he hits you harder. Suddenly you're a different fighter a few rounds in. And Diaz is so smart. He understood all of that. And when they were discussing at the beginning, he would have been like, he's using his attributes. I'm tougher than this guy. I got a chin that can handle his shots. I hit harder than this guy. Nobody can break me. So they built a game around it. Sometimes, weirdly, you guys know, there are people out there who hate Conor McGregor for whatever reason, right? So you see this weird, like debate between people that somehow, if you say, well, McGregor slowed down, therefore Nate won, it feels like, whoa, look at this nut hugger, because despite the fact that clearly Conor slowed down, but, people don't necessarily want reality. They want things that illustrate their points, which is uninformed. So, and it's hard to argue. You guys know, you're watching fighting constantly, you're consuming it, you're in a constant state of learning about it. And you will have arguments. You shouldn't because it's worthless, but you will have arguments with people who literally don't know anything about fighting, right? People who are excited by their passion, love or hate of one fighter or some point. You can't have a debate or an argument with somebody who doesn't know anything, right? So, but anyways, I digress. Sometimes people will make that point. Anyway, so that was true. So they changed them. They went back and they changed it. They're like, okay, things that were not risks in other settings are risks in this setting. So we must change it forever. But in doing, not forever, we must change it for this fight. But in doing so, restructuring and rebuilding McGregor around different principles and different ideas made him even better. Like, it made him a way better fighter. If he had fought Alvarez, if I'd never seen the Diaz fight, I would have thought to myself, well, if I'm Alvarez and I'm his people, I go in there and I try to physically break him. I try to make him wrestle. You do the Diaz thing. That's the game plan to win. But having seen McGregor overcome, first survive, accept, because he accepted all of his flaws in that, and that's the way to be able to identify them. I lost because I did this, didn't do this, failed in this area, wasn't good enough here, he was better than me. When people do that, it's super powerful, because then you just go about systematically addressing them. Somebody, blah, 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 gas tank. Again, something most people don't understand. There are 3 energy systems at use in combat, but anyways, we'll save that for another day. We have to address that. We have to address that my psychological state and the way I handle the pressure affects that. So those are those two. Now, I'm going to improve so that when I'm able to deliver the power with my left hand and not be there even better before, we're going to address that. I want to be in a situation where he can't get a hold of me for a few rounds and I can float and try to slow him down. We're going to address that. They addressed all of those things. So I'm a huge, and you wouldn't know it by my first few minutes of this discussion, but you would by watching the South scale. I'm a huge Eddie Alvarez fan. And I cheer for Eddie. Would be one of the few people that I would ever not really cheer for either guy in a fight with Conor McGregor, and vice versa. I'll probably, if David Mullins is with me, he will influence me to cheer for McGregor. But ultimately, these are two of my favorites. But so I'm fairly unbiased in this, and because I don't have a dog in the race. I'm looking at the beauty of combat, but I don't like Eddie saying that he thinks that Conor breaks at 8 minutes, because that's no longer true. And if anybody thinks about this, if you went and did anything, you play baseball and you're not a great catcher, so you fucking train and become a better catcher. It goes right back to what we were saying about Wonderboy. If we know that Woodley has the ability to close distance faster, Wonderboy and his team knows it. If anyone out there thinks that McGregor slows after 8 minutes or can't take this or isn't good at that, what the fuck do you think him and John Kavanagh have been doing? They've been shoring up all those things. The one that is going to blow people's minds, it may not be this fight, but it'll be soon enough, is when Conor McGregor's jiu-jitsu blows people out of the water. Because what the fuck? People are sitting around thinking that these are fixed athletes. You look at a guy who has grown to this level like this, and you think that in the last 6 months, since you haven't seen him train jiu-jitsu, how good do you think the guy is? Knowing his ability to grow, knowing his ability to acquire information. I mean, obviously, so he's going to blow somebody's mind in some grappling exchanges. It might be in this fight, it might not. Eddie's got a tenacious wrestling game. And much like Woodley, the assignment becomes, let's get a hold of this. Step 1, get a hold of this little Irish cat. Let's see if we can. Step 2, let's see if we can push him over to the fence. Step 3, what if we can put him on his back? And so, does anybody really think that John and Conor don't know that? Step 1, don't let him get a hold of me. If he does get a hold of me, step 1, let's circle off the fence. If he does get me on the fence, step 1, let's get underhooks and push his head to the ground and get out of this. There's simplified thinking going on at this kind of level, and it's hard to beat. It's the same kind of thing. It's like we know what Alvarez needs to do, and we know that there's fire that you have to pass through. His variable is that he's physically tough, mentally tough, incredibly game. His desire to win is elite of the elite. So he's a worse version of a tougher version of a Mendez or any of these guys that he's faced before. And so they have to be prepared for that. If they're prepared for that and they know what's coming and they know what it feels like and smells like and sounds like, then they prepare for it.
Do you think there's a risk for Conor coming into this fight? He obviously went in against Nate Diaz against the southpaw, long southpaw. Yeah. He had 2 goals that he changed the game plan. He evolved. As you said, it's the best fighters in the world. They always evolve. They change things. You can't look at their last fight and say this is the finished product. Do you think there's a risk for Conor going back in thinking that he's going in to face an orthodox fighter who likes to throw his right hand, and he gets pulled back into that same game of overcommitting on that left hand?
It is possible, for sure. I mean, it's a tricky one, man. When you're talking about Conor McGregor, you are talking about one of the great martial artists of the generation. You are. The only reason I have to say it that way is because you also are talking about a polarizing, famous man. Do you know what I mean? Those two things should not be connected to each other. But we live in a binary culture where people look and go, I hate that guy, he sucks, instead of, I hate that guy, he's amazing, and that makes me hate him even more. Man, I hope somebody can get him, but you gotta admit he's pretty fucking good. Like, I don't know why that is. That's a cultural thing. it's a sad thing, but it's the truth. And people don't understand they're playing into it too. They hate somebody because they're rich and famous and successful.
Human nature.
And part of being rich and famous and successful is having you fucking idiots going on YouTube and web pages and tweeting shit about how much they suck. That is the very nature of 2016 success, is engagement of people. Good, bad, or indifferent. And best of all is if they disagree, you get the population doing your job for you. So these morons who are like, this guy, the only reason he's famous is because he's getting a push. They are the push. You know what I mean? They are the push.
Well, it's as Conor says, a lot of the fighters in the UFC give out about how much attention Conor gets and the money he gets paid, but the man works his ass off to get there, you know. And what you were saying about the culture of 2016, that's been like that for hundreds of years here in Ireland, Robin. As soon as you do anything worth noteworthy here in your area, you turn into a bollocks. So that's an Irish thing that's been running for a long time. We're going to be running out of time here as well with you, Robin. So just before we do let you go, we do a thing here every week when we're doing our fights and breaking it down. We call it Under the Radar. Now, this is a very hard card to sort of look at it under the radar because this is a sick card. But out of the rest of the card, and you can go from the early prelims right up the fight pass or the main card, what do you think is the fight that in a way is being overlooked and is going to shine bright?
Like, can you imagine Jeremy Stephens versus Frankie Edgar being on a prelim? Like, what kind of crazy card do you have to have when that's the case, you know? Although again, like, we used to be, again, this is not new. You know, I compare radio to what happened. TV came along and crushed that, and then the internet crushes that, and then some things of the internet. This is technology. The cell phone instead of the TV. This is just what happens, and this is what's always happened, you know. What right now, the shift is if you can't handle somebody's mobility. I mean, if you want to talk about who's brilliant out there, Dominic Cruz, man. Dominic Cruz was this super modern thing 6 years ago. You know? What the fuck? And he was so far ahead. It took people years to even understand what he was doing in a way. And that's the same thing we got with this fight, is Cub Swanson was willing to engage Stephens. He's one of my very favorites. But he was more mobile and more fluid, and he beat him. Max Holloway, I talked to Stephens that week. Stephens had the right idea of what needs to be done to get a hold of Max Holloway and could not do it. And, you know, he's got only a win or two in the last while. He's a great fighter. Don't get me wrong. When he lands that thing, everybody goes crazy. Renan Barao, it's starting to appear, may not be at his best. You know, TJ may have changed him forever. And then Dennis Bermudez, Stephens was losing that fight, but won it with heart and never letting himself get out of it. So that's the attribute he's going to need in this fight. Because Frankie Edgar's been one of the best fighters in the world for a decade. You know what I mean? Against guys 20 pounds heavier than him, 25 pounds heavier than him consistently. So you're not going to out-evolve him. You're not going to grow him. So the attribute that's, if Stephens is going to have great moments, it's going to be staying in it, staying focused, believing, being confident, walking them down, and getting the moment. The only problem is, like, Gray Maynard landed that moment in round one, and Frankie still came back. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there's so many cards. I like trying to see if Miesha Tate fully bounces back, or if she, like, where her opinion of herself is. Yeah. Because Rocky Pennington's like, yeah, right. This is the one thing in front of me that all of a sudden I'm going out and demanding, title fights on pay-per-view cards for extra money. So that's a tough challenge. Weidman Romero, like, it's a sick card. Yeah. It's disgusting. Like, it makes me want to.
It is. You feel like you're watching porn while your wife's in bed. That's how good this card is. It's fucking sick.
It's sick. You guys are sick, man. I love the Irish.
Listen, Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We'd love to have you on anytime. You're welcome on, obviously, Fight Talk. We love it. And to coin your phrase, enjoy the hostilities. And thank you very much. And we look forward to all your future breakdowns, and enjoy the fights.
Thanks, guys. Just circle back in a month. Let's do it again.
Beautiful. Take care, my man. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. It was super fun.
Cheers, man.
Cheers. Take care.